Hello and welcome back to Assetto Corsa. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and today I'm going to be driving the Ferrari F2004, which I drove in the last Assetto Corsa video, but this time I'm going to be driving it at the Nurburgring GP, where the race only ended a few hours before you were going to see this video. Lewis Hamilton won, giving us 91 victories for him, so congratulations to him for matching the record for Michael Schumacher. And in this video I'm going to be talking about one, obviously driving around the Nurburgring, and this is about the race, or the Nurburgring GP circuit that is, and two, why stats themselves they cannot really be compared over different generations. And I know a lot of people have done this. So for me, for example, I would always think that Michael Schumacher is the greatest driver of all time. Some people might think Lewis Hamilton, other people might think Ayrton Senna, some people might think Jim Clark or Sterling Moss, or a whole raft of drivers, Mick Hakkinen, Nigel Mansell, Niki Lauda. There are so many. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why stats cannot be compared, and why I still think that Michael Schumacher is the greatest driver, but at the same time acknowledging the massive feat that Lewis Hamilton has achieved today with 91 victories, and of course a 7th World Championship coming up most likely. This is probably it'd be a miracle, I suppose, in a way, for Valtteri Bottas if he did not win it. Lewis Hamilton, that is. So we'll get to talk a little bit about that, so make sure you stay tuned for the next 20-25 minutes for that. So first of all, you can see that it is raining. It certainly is raining, and there's a weird effect there when I'm hitting the brakes. Look at that. That's an effect that I've not come across. Also, what I'm going to do is I am going to ensure that that's a fair amount of rain, wetness and water and everything. And let's just give it a drive. I've not driven on this track for a very, very long time. There's certainly some strange things happening with the tyres, but that's fine. Nothing really to worry about. We're going to ignore that as best as we can, and we're going to drive as best as I can at this track. Now, I absolutely love this rain, the rain effect, even though it isn't completed yet. But it's really, really nice. And let's first of all talk about Lewis Hamilton's race and the race overall. So Valtteri Bottas was on pole to begin with, but he lost it after a few laps. He managed to lock up in the cold conditions. I'm going to say that partly the cold conditions, but he did manage to lock up into turn 1, as many drivers did. And from that, Lewis Hamilton managed to sweep around. Bottas had to pit because he flat spotted the tyres. We had Hamilton pumping in very fast laps. Then we had a virtual safety car because of an incident between Kimi Raikkonen and George Russell. And then after that we had... Wait, is it the first one that we take? Oh, I thought it was the second one all this time. And then after that we had Valtteri Bottas retire with a problem with the car. I think it was a MGU-H issue. So lost the drive, essentially lost the ERS power, the sort of air system, which is the electronic recovery systems, which are now known as MGU-K, MGU-H, which is the kinetic recovery and the heat recovery, either from the exhaust, as KERS used to be, or from the turbo. It was KERS the exhaust? KERS was through regenerative braking, actually. So that is what we had there. Max Verstappen couldn't keep up. The remaining Mercedes was essentially in a class of its own, though Verstappen was getting closer. There was a safety car at one point. Hamilton managed to time it one well. One thing that did annoy me mildly about both Hamilton and Verstappen was the way they were complaining about the tyres getting too cold. And you could see very clearly that by the time they got to turn 2 and turn 3, after the safety car went in, the tyres were fine. So I think their complaints were just a bit silly, to be completely honest. I think just get on with it and do the job. Stop complaining about it. Whoa. And of course that's all culminated in a 91st and record equaling victory for Lewis Hamilton. Oh look, I'm doing a Pierre Gasly. For Lewis Hamilton, which is great for him. Congratulations. I think Mick Schumacher, who unfortunately did not get to race on Friday or test a Formula 1 car out for Alfa Romeo on Friday due to the weather conditions, Mick Schumacher presented him with one of Michael Schumacher's helmets, which I thought was a lovely touch. It really was, and Lewis Hamilton did have some nice things to say as well about Michael Schumacher. And I think, yeah, Lewis Hamilton is probably going to, provided he doesn't retire at the end of the season, I think Lewis Hamilton will probably reach 100 victories. He has the car beneath him. He clearly does have the skill and talent. He doesn't really have much in the way of challengers in his team. It depends on what happens next year with the teams. See, I don't know what Fernando Alonso is going to bring with Alpine. They might be able to do something. We've got Sainz at Ferrari with Leclerc. Maybe Ferrari will see a resurgence. We've got Aston Martin with Sebastian Vettel. First time he's driving a Mercedes engine next year. And we've also got Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris at McLaren. So there is a lot of interest for next season in the championship. Let's see if anyone can take that fight to Mercedes. But for now, I think there are 6 races left. Hamilton definitely has a possibility and probably a fairly strong chance of winning most of those 6, if not all 6, taking his tally up to 97 race wins, and then all he needs is 3 for the 100, which is, that's pretty impressive, I would say. As much as I would like to not see Schumacher's record broken, it was going to happen. And this leads me on to the whole idea about not being able to compare different eras and records. Now, I've been a supporter of Michael Schumacher from before his Ferrari days, before his Ferrari championship winning days, that is. I used to support him back when I was really, really small. Initially it was because of the colour of his car, the Benetton, and then obviously I did grow up liking Ferraris. I used to have Ferrari toys, and you see a driver go to Ferrari and like, oh, let's support that team. And then you could always see that there was one driver that would be really, really good. Especially, I remember Spain in 1996, where Schumacher, I believe he lapped the entire field, and he was so quick. And you're thinking that is an incredible driver. And from then, I knew the name Michael Schumacher and who he was and what he did, and that's where I went to support, and I've supported him ever since. So for me, he was the greatest driver and is the greatest driver of all time. However, you had Ayrton Senna. Now, I do not really recall seeing Senna race. I may have seen 1 or 2 of his races at a very young age, but nothing more than that, because obviously he was tragically killed in the accident at Imola. So some people say, well, Senna could have been better. Senna was better than Schumacher. Senna only has, is it 43 wins? So you look at Ayrton Senna and you think, well, by the stats he clearly is not, but then you have to take into account the era, the kind of driving, the kind of cars, the mechanical issues, the reliability, the work ethic, the style of character, the person. He was a very charismatic person. Still controversial at times, just like Michael Schumacher, and Lewis Hamilton has been controversial at times as well. So, it has happened. But people said Senna was the greatest driver of all time. People still say Senna is the greatest driver, and I think I would probably put him in my top 3 without a doubt. My top 3 I think is Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna and Jim Clark. I think Jim Clark was a fantastic driver, but again, far less race wins, far less races, but really up there. Then you've got non-world champions such as Stirling Moss. Never won a world championship, but I would place him as one of the greatest drivers. I'd put him in the top 10 for me, Stirling Moss. Mika Häkkinen, personally, I put Mika Häkkinen fairly high up. So do I put Fernando Alonso fairly high up. And the reason I put them too high up is because I think with those two drivers, they had to battle Michael Schumacher at his absolute prime. And Michael Schumacher at his prime is very difficult. Michael Schumacher at his prime was almost impossible. And yes, he did have... Mika Häkkinen was very good. You had David Coulthard, who was also very good. Unfortunately not as consistent, but you had him. Michael Schumacher had to obviously race against the likes of Ayrton Senna. He had to race against Nigel Mansell and those kind of drivers. Wait, did he? Yes, he did. He raced against Nigel Mansell. So there was a lot that Schumacher had to face as well. Really good drivers. I think he raced against Prost as well. And then obviously later on he had to race against Damon Hill and Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard, Fernando Alonso. We've seen him race against Lewis Hamilton in the second career of Michael Schumacher, as it were, where he was not as successful, but I still think he did a lot of great things, and the underpinnings of this Mercedes team are based around Schumacher, I think. So he had a lot. Now you could say that, well, Schumacher could have won the 1997 World Championship, and I would say, yeah, he could have won that one had it not been for his crash with Villeneuve that got him disqualified. He was adamant that he was innocent until he saw the footage and then realised, hang on a minute, he has driven into Jacques Villeneuve. Ross Brawn actually said that. He goes, he thought Villeneuve had driven into him. And yeah, that's Schumacher's mistake. Given that we know that information, maybe he shouldn't have been disqualified. Maybe he was lying, we never know. But he could have won the 1997 World Championship. That would have made him an 8-time World Champion. He could have won, and probably should have won, the 2006 World Championship, except for the reliability of his cars. Obviously back then, cars were not as reliable as they are nowadays. I say that. In today's race we had a few engine retirements. Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas, Alex Albon, and in fact no, those were the 3 engine retirements, I believe. So you had that to contend with, which I think is something that they do not have so much of in this era, which is why you have the difference. Less races. So Schumacher in an average season would have less races than Hamilton has had on average in a season, but at the same time Ayrton Senna had even less, and people like Jim Clark and Stirling Moss, and they had far less. So all of these things have to be taken into account. That was a terrible line. This section, I'm not very good at these few corners because I hardly have ever driven those corners. The rest of the track I think I can do well-ish at. Obviously I'm slow all the way around because I'm talking and not really paying too much attention to the driving. But, you know, we could say that Schumacher could have had 100 victories had he not broken his leg in Silverstone. Had he not been hit by Romain Grosjean and had that 5th-place grid penalty at Monaco. That would have been something, wouldn't it? 2012 Monaco, Michael Schumacher wins. We saw the way he took pole. But at the same time, We could say Ayrton Senna should have had the 1994 championship, not Schumacher. So you've got that. And if Schumacher should have had the 1997 and 2006 championships, that means Fernando Alonso would only be a single-time world champion, one-time world champion. That doesn't seem fair because Alonso, I think, was very deserving of multiple world championships. I think he should have won the 2012 world championship, not Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, I think Fernando Alonso was the better driver. I think Vettel, 3 world championships, sounds about right for Sebastian Vettel. Obviously he has 4, and he's a very nice person, Sebastian Vettel. I'm just saying that these are my opinions of where would things have gone, why we can't do these comparisons. We could say Schumacher could have been an 8-time, 9-time world champion. Senna should have been a 4-time world champion. Alonso should have won the 2012 championship. Vettel should be 3 times. Hamilton could be 5 times, you know. There are loads of different ones. Should Rosberg have won a different one? Should Bottas have won a championship? No offence to Valtteri Bottas, but I do not think he's giving Lewis Hamilton... He is Lewis Hamilton's wingman more than, in my opinion anyway, than Barrichello and Irvine were Schumacher's wingman. I think Barrichello and Irvine were a lot better at racing and racing Michael Schumacher than Valtteri Bottas is at racing Lewis Hamilton. Yes, he won the Russian Grand Prix, and this one was not his fault in terms of him losing due to an engine issue. However, that being said, he'd already lost first place, and I think once he'd lost that first place, Lewis Hamilton was going to be gone. I'm too slow there. Okay, that was a little bit better. Still scruffy through there. So, yeah, I think Lewis Hamilton, 91 victories, that is an incredible stat. That is certainly an incredible stat. And he is in the top 10 drivers. I think he's in the top 10 drivers for me. I'm going to have to think about that. But for me, I have Sterling Moss up there. I have Nigel Mansell up there as well. I have Fernando Alonso and Mika Hakkinen for me as well. I think Mika Hakkinen retired too early. 2003 World Championship, Mika Hakkinen should have had that, but he retired in 2001. I think Hakkinen should have had the 2003 one, not Schumacher. So then that would have brought Schumacher back down to 7 World Championships if we add in the 2006 and the 1997. Wait, that does, yes, and take away the 1994. That brings Schumacher right back to 7. So I think 7 is probably a fair number for Michael Schumacher when you work it out like that and you do the balance. But that is not how it went. That's not how life goes. Lewis Hamilton is going to be a 7-time world champion. That much is almost a 100% given. He will be a 7-time world champion, and that's what he's been dealt, which is great for him. For him, I am happy as a person being happy for another person. I am very happy for him, and he's worked hard for it. And whatever I may think of him compared to other drivers, he has worked very, very hard for a number of years for these World Championships and does keep pushing. What I would like to see, and this is just something about Formula 1 as it is currently, at the moment for all drivers they know when to pit, they know... Oh dear, that's going to hurt. They know when to pit, they know when to... Let me get myself back on track. They get told about their tyres, they get told about all these various things. Yes, they're not told how they can race, but they're told that they need to you know, they need to look after this tyre and they need to look after the brakes, and this is getting hot and that's getting hot, and we want this mode for this start, and we want this mode for this start, and so on and so forth. I want to see that all gone. I do want to see that gone. I don't want drivers, or I don't want engineers, that was terrible, to have the data to be able to tell the drivers that, oh, your tyres are going to go off the cliff, we need to pit within this lap, or okay, give it everything you've got, we're pitting this lap. I want to see drivers telling engineers, okay, I think my tyres are going off, this is what I can feel, this is what I can feel, this is what I can feel, and then the engineers from there make the judgment call. And then by all means, after the race, they can pore over the data and then tell the driver, okay, so you know when you said that the tyre was going off here, it actually had this much life left in it, so you know, next time when you feel that, we think you can drive faster, we think you can still do this, we can still manage for a few more laps. That would be awesome. In my opinion, that would be absolutely 100% awesome, and I would love to see drivers driving around like that. And again, this comes back to the whole thing of you cannot compare the eras. Senna's era, Schumacher's era was different to this era in terms of reliability, knowing what was going on with the car at all times. Didn't have that. We do now. So, is Lewis Hamilton the greatest driver of all time? In my opinion, no. In someone else's opinion, perhaps. Is Ayrton Senna the greatest driver of all time? In my opinion, no. Although it's very close. In someone else's opinion, they'd say yes. Is Michael Schumacher the greatest driver of all time? In my opinion, yes. Very, very close though to Ayrton Senna, who would be, you know, you're talking about, for me, if we were placing them as out of 10s, let's say, I'd say Michael Schumacher is a 9.8, and Ayrton Senna would be a 9.775. That's how close we're talking between the two of them. So that's just my opinion, and I'd love to hear other people's opinions about comparing drivers of different eras. Could you compare Lewis Hamilton to Sebastian Vettel? I think you can. Lewis Hamilton is a better driver overall than Sebastian Vettel. But then you've got the car as well, and you've got to take that into consideration. Maybe the car is nowhere near drivable for Vettel, but then we have seen a really good Ferrari and Vettel make mistakes, whilst Hamilton has not made similar mistakes with a good Mercedes. So you compare all of those things. I like Vettel personally more than Hamilton, but I think Hamilton is the better driver, hands down. I'm taking the wide Formula 1 line that they were taking today. That was amusing at turn 1 on the first lap. I'm not sure if anybody made turn 1. I think I saw in the replay maybe 4 or 5 drivers actually make turn 1. But anyway, that's my opinion. Lewis Hamilton has won 91 races now. He is going to win a 7th World Championship. Statistically, he is going to end up as the greatest Formula 1 driver ever. Not a problem for me. Records are made to be broken at the end of the day. Well, that wasn't too bad. That was... oh, okay. Almost lost the car right there. And what I'm going to do now is I'll just do maybe 1 or 2 more laps quietly, and then let you guys go. Let me know what you think of my thoughts. Let me know what you think of Hamilton's victory. 91 wins. What was your favourite victory of Lewis Hamilton? I'll be honest, I think my favourite Lewis Hamilton victory was probably... now I'm thinking back to what could have been what was one of the crazier races. I quite like the victories where he's really had to fight hard for it. That which would have probably been back at his McLaren days. I'm just trying to think back. I'll have to think back on one of my favourite Hamilton victories. What's your favourite Senna victory? Your favourite Mansell victory? Schumacher victory? I think my favourite Schumacher victory would have been Suzuka 2000 or Spain 96. Those two victories stick in my mind. For Senna, I think it had to be Donington 1993. It certainly has to be Donington 1993. For Nigel Mansell, I think British Grand Prix, certainly. Oh, that was terrible. But there we go, that's just my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think, and please do remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa. I still do make them every now and then. Leave a comment in the comments box below letting me know what you think. Don't forget to support me on Patreon if you can do so at www.patreon.com/ecgadgets. Your support would be massively appreciated. It would really help me out. And also, you can find me on social media at ecgadgetslp for both Twitter and Instagram. Next season's Formula 1 is going to be very interesting, I think. So, make sure you stay tuned for more videos. Make sure you stay tuned for more F1 in the future. And I will see you, I will speak to you, or make more videos or something next time.